This is Jennifer with Renderosity Blacksmith3D, and I'm here today to show you a demo of the new hair tools inside of Blacksmith Pro-7. I'm going to give a few minutes for people to start logging in. We had a little hiccup a while ago where I had to log out and back in. Alright, for those of you just tuning in, this is Jennifer with Blacksmith3D, and today I'm going to demonstrate the new hair tools for version 7. If you don't already know, a beta version of 7 is available for anyone to download and use until the regular version is released. Those of you who may remember our previous beta releases, it is a little bit different this time. In the past, you've been required to have a previous license already owned. This time is just completely open beta for anyone, license or not. So it's a little bit more of a free-for-all for the people especially who might want to use the free trial but don't like the free trial because it doesn't allow you to save or export. Right now the beta is kind of like a free trial because you get the full everything, even the save and export. So I'll give you a link here so that you can get more information in case you're interested on the beta. And we've also recently put up a new video for just the basic interface hotkeys because those shortcuts can really save you a lot of time when you're working in Blacksmith, and if you're interested in that, I will also post a link here for you. Alright, for those of you tuning in, this is Jennifer with Blacksmith3D, and I'm going to go ahead and start showing just some of the new hair tools that are inside of Blacksmith3D Pro-7. First, I'm going to start over here and I'm going to go to my file and down to Open Project because I have a project sitting here that already has a hair cap created. And it's just a simple skull cap that I've created for the Genesis 3 male. And if I was just bringing a hair cap in, I would want to make sure over here in the Manager Tools that I double click on Materials and click on that skull cap and right click to go down to Hair Options and make sure that I have the hair growth surface checked, because you cannot create any hair strands until you have a hair growth surface to create strands from. So once I have my hair growth area, I can then go to my hair tools and click on the hair strand creator. It's just a little plus sign there that's kind of small, but this is the one to create a hair strand. And when I do, you see the menu over here changes to my hair strand tools. Now by default, this width I believe is usually about a 10 or maybe a 30. It saved as 0 when I saved my project. But you do want to make sure you have some width to the hair strand, otherwise when you create the hair strand it wouldn't show because it was 0. So the length just depends on how long you want the hair length to be, and this is something that you just play with and kind of get used to of how long you want that length to be. By default, the root depth is 10, and that's a good beginning stage. Most of the defaults in here are really good for just starting out and getting used to it. I also like to open up the mirror and symmetry and click on the use symmetry as I'm getting started. And that's because as I create, I will be creating on this side, but it will automatically be duplicated on the other side, and it can just save some time for production when you're creating hair. Really anything in Blacksmith you can turn symmetry on. This hair cap, however, is not symmetrical, so sometimes it might not give you the exact look that you might be wanting, but you can always turn symmetry off, edit however you want to, and then turn it back on. So, is everybody hearing me okay? Are they liking the broadcast so far? Any thumbs up? Alright, well let's keep moving. Let's get to actually creating the hair. So here I have the hair strand tool selected, and I'm going to make sure that I'm on my skull cap here when I go to create. And voila, I have a hair strand. Now by default it kind of sticks in this weird position, but I'm going to press 0 so I can see my wireframe overlay because I prefer to work watching my wireframe when I'm moving things around. So now we've got to move this hair into position, and sometimes getting used to some of the tools, that can be a little bit trickier than it seems like in the beginning. Here I have the strength on this tool turned up pretty high, but I probably don't want it quite that high. I'm going to put it at 30. 30 is the default for the hair move tool, strand move. And I have symmetry still turned on. By default, it goes to the clicked point for where I'm going to select here. And I like to also make sure I have turned on my hot selection view because I want to see the red area. The red area is my hot selection. And if I want it stronger, I can go over here, turn it stronger, and then make my selection again and see that that selection grows. And then I can just start playing with it, moving it around from different angles until I get it in a position that I want. Another thing to think about here is being able to use some of the shortcut keys, the hotkeys, because your left and right and up and down arrow keys helps you to get around. I find that useful. That way I can be looking at what I'm doing a little bit easier. And that's my F2 to zoom in and out, my F3 to rotate, my F1 to pan. So now I'm going to look back at my tool and kind of move this around, play with it some, and bring it down. And then I might want to switch back to the front and see how we're doing in reference to a face. And one of the things that people have mentioned and that they have noticed is how the tip seems to want to curl up. There's a couple different solutions for this as you're moving the hair around. And a lot of times it just takes with playing with it because there's a lot of different things going on here. But I find that being able to use the morphing tools over here to straighten out a curl, like once I have this selected, if I'm down around here, for my selection is red, I can go over here to my morphing tools and actually use the touch-up chisel or the touch-up hammer. The hammer, think of it as maybe bigger spots, where the chisel is maybe a little bit softer. But under this touch-up chisel we have a couple options over here of the type we're going to use, and we have a smooth, we have smudge, sharpen, flatten. The flatten works pretty good. I also like the smooth. It just depends on what you're doing. But for this, I'm going to use the flatten. And then I'm going to come over here and just kind of straighten that tip out. Now, another way that that can also be done is over here in the hair tools using the straightener. It just depends on the effect that you're wanting to get, and sometimes that flatten works a little bit better. It just depends. But here I'll show you the straightener. And I have it pretty strong. I'm going to turn this down to about a 50% on my strength. And then I'm going to click. And when you're using the straightener, once you highlight, get your red hot selection, you actually just pull your mouse up, arrow key up. I have a pretty good delay right now. Let me strengthen that. Well, my computer's having a hard time memory-wise keeping up with me here. Then I can go back to my move tool, move it around. You can put some of your own waves in it, or you can use the rotate tool or the waver to put waves into it. The waves is more for like maybe some of your bigger looking type waves, and the rotate is for usually smaller sections of kind of getting those just right. Sometimes it's a little hard to see what you're doing unless you rotate and kind of move it around to see how the hair strand is changing. I like looking at it face on for certain things. And we do recommend that you move the hair into position the way that you want it pretty much before doing a lot of curls or waves, and rotate. Get it kind of the width that you'd like. Again, using F3, I can kind of turn it so that when I'm using the widen, say for example, I think, okay, well, I've got this a little too wide, you can go in using the tool to narrow it or widen it. And that's just by pulling in and out. And once you get the hair, kind of the width and length and all those things that you would like, after that is when is a good time to actually do the curl. And it's best to curl from the tip because of the way that it's going to, in a curl, I think of it almost like a twist. The way that it works is that it's just going to twist it around. And this does, again, take quite a bit of playing with it, but I do highly recommend making sure your hair is in the position that you want it in the direction before using the curl, because here, once I'm done using the curl, if I go back in to move it around, you could get some hair looking not quite the way you want it to. And then my strengthen, let me crank up the hardness here so we can see what's going on. Alright, it looks like my straightener is not cooperating right now. Y'all will be patient with me, as this is my first Facebook live broadcast other than a couple of tests that I've been doing. And So that's the first strand. Once I get it where I want it and I'm pretty happy with it, I can easily go in and just add more strands here. And I always like to rotate the head and put the strand kind of exactly where I want it as I'm looking at the scalp, just so that, for example, if I wanted to add a whole lot of strands on the side of the head but I'm looking at the front of it, that strand might not look quite right on the hair scalp. So it's best to do it in the area that you're looking at. So again, as I'm moving it around, and some people can do this a lot better than I can without as much curl. It takes a lot of little baby steps to move a strand. It's not just one big movement, so you got to think of it as several small movements. And here I can see where I've moved the strand more into the scalp, so I'd want to bring that back out. Again, lots of little baby steps along the way to get that the way you want it to look. And as you get used to playing with the tools, it's a lot easier once you get used to them. These are still pretty new for us here too. Alright, here's my straightener working. I think I have problems with some of my memory and several things running while I'm talking. But this also helps get that curl out of the ends and straightens the hair back up. Alright, anybody have any questions? Alright, while other people are joining us, this is just the creation of a hair strand. I'm just kind of rotating it around where I want it, and then adding strands over here with this Add Strand Creator. And an important thing to notice over here in the manager, that as we've been creating hair strands, automatically over here in our materials, a hair strand material has been created for us with the hair strand already noted here. But let's say, for instance, I want to bring in an existing hair that I would like to edit instead of starting from scratch. So what I could do is go up here to File and create a new project. And I'm just going to let this one go. I'm not going to save. If I had wanted to save my work and come back to it later, I would have gone up here to File and Save Project. If you wanted to save your project in steps, you could do Save Project As and give it like number 2 or 3 or something, so that you can watch your progression along the way, so that when you're working on it, if you decide, man, I've just got an hour's worth of work that I didn't want to keep, that you could go back to another point in time instead of having to ditch the complete project or trying to Control Z to undo a whole lot of work. So here, now that I have a new project, I'm going to go to my import, or you can also do a drag and drop. And over here, I have an OBJ for a ponytail that's our publishings that we use. And I can just drag and drop it into the window here. Now there's a couple options when you're importing. And for this, I'm not going to worry about morph targets or flipping anything. I do like to center the object, and I do like to go on and bring my textures in. If I was going to save this as a template for future use, I could go on and check my mesh here so that it brings the mesh into Blacksmith, and when I save a template, this mesh would kind of, where that lives, would be stored in its memory to make that faster access for future work. Especially if you have a hair cap, say for G3 females, that you know you're going to build all of your hair models on, then you would probably want to go on and click that hair cap as a mesh when you're bringing it in, so that you can keep it there as a fixed asset inside the software for faster access. Import can sometimes take several seconds. It's not that uncommon, unfortunately, with Windows to sometimes see the not responding up here. I just ignore that because it's basically kind of like waiting on a spinning round circle, because it will usually catch back up to itself. Unfortunately, the computer I'm on does not have a whole lot of memory for doing this, so it can seem a little bit slower at times. Alright, so here we have the hair that I have brought in, and I'm going to change its angle just a little bit so that you can see more about the hair. This is the dreaded ponytail hair from our publishing, and when you bring in a hair to edit, you're going to have to make sure that you go over here to the manager, and under the materials we're going to have to make sure which one of these are going to be assigned the hair strands and which ones are going to be assigned the hair growth surface. Now, there should be a good way of figuring this out. Alright. So in my manager, let's see. I want to make sure which one of these. Normally you would think that the cap is the cap, but I wanted to make sure. So here, under the hair options, I'm going to make sure that the cap is assigned as my hair growth surface. And then under the dreads, I'm going to make sure that it is assigned as hair strands. And there's also fuzzy strands here, so I'm going to make sure I have those assigned as hair strands. And then I can actually, from the hair, select a strand. Oh, hang on, my memory is still trying to catch up to me here. And I actually want to see my hot selection so I can see what I'm grabbing and moving on this existing hair. Now you'll have to make sure that the materials are grouped in hair so that you can separate these out and define which ones are hair strands versus the actual hair growth surface, because it does make a difference. So if I wanted to add new hair strands, I could now from the hair growth surface once we have that assigned. But for the most part, something like this, you're really just looking at kind of moving around some of the existing parts or pieces. And I do still have symmetry on, so an important note, with a hair that's not symmetrical, you may not want to have that turned on. It could probably cause problems. It just depends on how symmetrical the hair is. I know this one is not. So I want to make sure I'm not trying to move something on the other side of the hair here as I'm playing with these little strands. And of course you can zoom in and get a lot better look of what's going on. I also like to hit the letter O so that I can see the wireframe overlay. In this case it's a little bit dark. So it may not help a whole lot. Pressing the O again toggles it back off. And now my memory problem is catching up to me, looks like. Let's see. Yeah, it's not wanting to move either, so I'll just have to wait for it to catch up. But in the meantime, is there any questions? No, we have not tried to use the Garibaldi hair systems. Alright, well that's it for the demo today. I hope you have enjoyed it, and we will leave this video out for other people to see and view over time, and hope if you have questions that you'll comment and let us know. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.